We're almost at 5 o'clock, so thanks to those of you who joined a little bit early. We're going to get started right at 5, but welcome everyone. So great to see you after the month break.
It feels like it's been a month. I'm looking at these faces and it's reminding me that I haven't seen everyone in a while. So I'm really excited for today's meeting.
Would someone maybe from the Air District be able to check if they can see YouTube live? It's lagging on my end, but my computer's been funky today, so I just want to, I know it's on, but I just want to make sure it's accessible. Please and thank you.
I'll check right now.
Thank you. Good afternoon to those of you joining. We'll get started in just a few minutes.
I see it on there.
I also see it on there.
Awesome. Thank you for checking. Good. I'm glad it's working. So it's just my computer. Cool. All right, we're coming up right at 5 o'clock almost, so just want to welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our August CSC meeting. It's so great to see so many faces here today, especially after not having seen many of you in July. So we're excited to be hosting a meeting this month, and we're going to get started with housekeeping in just a little bit. So thank you so much for joining and welcome back. And maybe if you want to, feel free to share in the chat something fun that you did in July to take advantage of the break if you would like to. All right, it is 5 o'clock and we have a pretty tight agenda. So I do want to get us started with some of those housekeeping items and logistics as always. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to support this commitment that you have to improve air quality in your communities. We really appreciate folks showing up every month and taking the time here at these meetings to voice your opinion and your ideas and just to show how much you really care about your community. So thank you so much for being here.
Today's agenda topics are designed to revisit prior conversations that we had in June. So you'll find that a lot of what we're talking about today is, following up on some of what we had discussed in June, especially around some of the key incentives measures that we were discussing. So we look forward to sharing a lot of those updates with you today. And the goal is really, as you all shared, we want to use this time to determine next steps, to build consensus, and that's exactly what the Air District and community co-host for this month have designed. Before I get started, I just wanted to remind you all, I'm Gabby Magana from Harder & Company Community Research, and I'm part of the facilitation team here for the Stockton AB617 CSC community. And I'm joined by my colleague, Jem Marasigan, who is a part of the facilitation team as well. And she has been supporting here with, tracking those action items, tracking attendance for the stipends, all of those things. And we actually have a new colleague here, Laura Martinez, and I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself shortly. But Laura has previously supported the AB617 process and chapter, and she's now joining the Stockton team in a co-facilitation role. So you'll see her both facilitating these meetings from time to time and also supporting a lot of the important logistics and behind the scenes work that we usually do at these meetings. So with that, I'm just going to pass it to Laura to briefly share a little bit about herself before we move forward with more logistics.
Thank you, Gabby. Hi, everyone. This is Laura Martinez. As Gabby shared, I was on the chapter team before. Sorry, long day. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you all and just learning with you and from you and see how we can cultivate an equitable team and change together. So definitely looking forward to getting to know the Stockton community a little bit better and just taking your lead and following your lead in this group. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Laura. And now I'm just going to walk through our regular housekeeping slides. And then please remember that to ensure equitable access to the information and comments shared today, we ask that you please share your name before speaking. And this ensures that we are as inclusive as possible of the ASL interpretation process. So just a friendly reminder to the group. And with that, I am actually going to walk us through our, and I apologize. Are you able to see the presentation screen? Okay, let me stop sharing. Here we go. Okay, so this here is our 34th CSC meeting. And as always, just some regular Zoom etiquette. Please make sure that you're muting yourself when you are not speaking to ensure the best audio quality for everybody who joins here today. One of the items that we go over every month is ensuring that folks are changing their screen name. This really helps us to keep track of who's joining here today, any programmatic or agency affiliation, and then also keeping track of residents as well as CSC members who are joining. So please, if you're able to change your name by clicking on the upper right-hand corner, and for CSC members, labeling your name with the CSC dash first comma last name, or the R for resident dash first comma last name. All other participants can share any other affiliation. So for example, the Air District, CARB, us here at Harder & Company, and any other organization names. Also, reminding you all to please link your phone audio to your video. This helps us keep just understand who's speaking in the calls, and then also for attendance purposes, it's much easier to know who joined the call if we have the name tied to the phone number. So again, you can do this by selecting the little arrow above the microphone button and then linking both of the audios together. And then once again, here's the naming convention that we use for the CSC name. If you need any support, you can always message anybody from the Harder & Company team. We have the H+Co in our names, or you can also message the Air District team. They're more than happy to help. Just reviewing a little bit of Zoom meeting etiquette, just reminding folks to please stay on mute unless you're speaking. This helps us to reduce any audio feedback. And then just a reminder that you're able to both mute and unmute if you dialed in by pressing *6. And then similarly, if you're wanting to raise your hand in order to indicate that you're interested in speaking, you're able to do that on the Zoom desktop, laptop, phone feature. But if you are joining, you can, by phone, you can just click *9 to both raise your hand and lower it. And then a reminder for residents in the stipend program to please stay for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. So this is about 90 minutes within this 2-hour time frame. And then once again, the reminder to please share your name before sharing a comment to allow for smooth interpretation of our conversation. As always, these are the group agreements that you all have outlined in your CSC charter. So the first one is to help achieve the meeting goals. Please focus on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue. Also letting everybody speak. So that means stepping up if you tend to be more quiet, and stepping back if you tend to share more often. Being civil and respectful. So it's okay to disagree with folks, but please be respectful, empathetic, and civil. Staying on point and on time. So keeping our comments brief and to the point really allows us to make sure we're getting input from various folks, but then also staying true to what folks have planned in the agenda as well. Attacking the problem and not the person. So once again, if you do disagree with somebody, focus on the challenging those ideas or the outcomes, but not necessarily attacking the person. And then finally, seeking common ground is really important to help build consensus and finding shared values that will help advance us toward the best results. Today's agenda has this general welcome introductions piece. Then we're going to review the action items tracker. We're going to get the quarterly air monitoring update. And then the bulk of the meeting really focuses on the Serp incentives measures follow-up presentation. So it's a follow-up from our discussion in June. And then finally, if we have, with the time we have left, we'll do some quick standing updates from any the subcommittees and/or agencies that have urgent updates, especially. And then we will wrap up with some next steps and then have some time for public comment. Oh, and that is everything for today. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it off to Jonathan here, who is a part of the volunteered graciously to be a community co-host for the August meeting. So I'm going to pass it off to him to share some welcoming remarks with the group.
Hey everyone, I am not going to take more time. Let's get to it. We got a lot of work to do today, but I'm glad to see everyone here for the betterment of our community. So any questions, please put in the chat. And we're always here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. And then passing it off to Jessica from the Air District if she has any welcoming remarks.
I do. I just have a couple of brief things to say. I just want to start off by acknowledging, and we'll make this a practice in the future, just for full transparency, we do bring a number of district staff, and because of the variety of topics for tonight, we have a little more than usual. So I'm just going to have them wave as I just say we have some folks from our air monitoring team, Brad and John. They'll be talking about the air monitoring and analysis today. We have Stephanie and Eric. They're both on my team, and it's really a training opportunity for our new person, Eric. And then we also have part of our outreach team, Juan Luis Carranza, as well as Heather. And Heather's about to give us an exciting announcement, which is why she's going to have a speaking role later today. And then finally, we, especially given the discussion today about incentives, we have Aaron Tarango, who's with our incentives team. So lots of people here, lots to discuss today. And as Jonathan said, and I want to give him full credit, we had probably more meetings with Jonathan than we've had with a lot of co-hosts, just given the complexity of today's discussion. So I just want to thank him for all of that. And then with that, if you don't mind, Gabby, I know this is sort of a last second thing, but Heather actually has an announcement. And I know in connecting with a lot of you in preparation for today's meeting, given an email announcement we sent out yesterday, some of you might have some questions about what we call our Clean Air Rooms pilot program. So I'm going to have Heather describe a little bit, just because it's something so new and so different. So Heather.
Thank you, Jess. This is Heather. Hi, everyone. So nice to be back here with you. And yes, you may have seen the email. If not, check your email. We sent the committee the announcement about the Clean Air Room pilot program. Emphasis on pilot. This is the first time we've done this. And there is a sort of specific pot of money given to us by our governing board, or authorized by our governing board, to basically distribute single room air purifiers to the public. The target specifically is those living in the SB 535 disadvantaged communities group. And I'll dig into that just for a second. That is, you can use CalEnviroScreen, and I think Steph will probably drop into chat for me the link to this program page, because within the Clean Air Room program page is the link to CalEnviroScreen, so you can check your address. Keeping in mind, about 90% of the valley does fall in this footprint. And so we kind of had to have a delineating line somewhere. And so that is what determines if you are eligible for the device. And to apply, it's a simple form online. For those that have technology issues and language issues, or challenges, I should say, we're definitely taking phone calls and can have staff help somebody fill it out right, online over the phone. There is proof of address verification needed. So there will be follow-up for those that do it over the phone. But if you are able to just jump online, fill out your address and supply your information, you can take a picture. I think Margot might have even done it today. Don't have to scan your utility bill or do anything crazy. You could just take a picture. You just got to be able to get that picture into your computer so you can upload it at the time you fill out your application. And basically that's it. If you find your address is eligible and you fill out the information and hit submit, that's all you have to do. We'll verify on our end, we'll check your address, and in about 3 or 4 weeks, you'll get the confirmation email, but you'll also receive at the address provided the unit. It'll be shipped to you. We've partnered with Ace Hardware Corporation, and we're leaning on their access to inventory. There is no, like, I want to pick my device. We basically are committing to provide protection in a room up to 220 square feet. So we, encourage the public to find the room they'll spend most of their time in, and they would set up this device. And these devices will filter the fine particulates, or at least that's our goal, during wildfire events. So let's say either you don't have good insulation in your house, or you have a swamp cooler, or in general, you're finding that you're feeling the impacts of overwhelming influence of wildfire smoke during a wildfire event. These are intended to go into the hands of disadvantaged valley residents so that they can set them up and have a clean air space during these scary episodes. I see Margot's hand raised. Margot, go for it. How was the process?
I'd just like to say, this is Margot. I tied up Stephanie and Heather's time earlier today because I saw this email and I thought, wow, does this apply to me? I am not a disadvantaged home, but it is the census tract that defines that, and it is the air quality that defines that. And
Correct.
So my application did go through, and I would just encourage people to look at this. It is pretty simple unless you're technologically challenged like some of us.
In which case you call and we assist you. Right, Margot? To your point, it is not, and the email says this isn't something specific to the effort we've all been at. This is a little bit broader in scope and valley-wide. So all 8 counties, this applies to all folks living in all 8 counties. And as you all know, we've got other work we could probably move on to do in this community. But for now, it's a pilot program, and we're going to do our best to get over 1,000 units distributed here in the next few weeks.
And forward it to all your people.
Yes, please. Yes, please. So I didn't look at chat, but it's a short URL, valleyair.org/clean air room. Get you right where you need to be.
Thanks, Heather. And
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing. This is Margot again. Sorry. It is first come, first serve. This is a pilot project, and so it is limited, but we anticipate more in the future, perhaps.
Yes, thanks for that point, Margot. To be honest, it's actually very specifically divided out, and we have population-based buckets in each of the counties based on population demand. And yes, it is a pilot. And once we're exhausted, it'll close for the pilot program, but hopefully we take what we learn, go back to the board, talk it through, and maybe, you know, take it to the next level. We'll see.
Thanks, everyone. This is Gabby. Jess, is that all from the Air District at this time?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move forward with reviewing the action items tracker. So I'm going to hand it off to Stephanie, and maybe while she's pulling it up, I'm just going to reiterate the purpose of this. So again, this is sharing any progress that has happened on those action items that we, the facilitation team, jot down at the end of these meetings. So again, this really helps to encourage transparency and accountability with the various pieces that come up during these meetings so that we can make sure that we're advancing the action surrounding those. So Stephanie, if you'd like to share any updates for the last couple months.
Thanks so much, Gabby, for setting that up, and good evening, everyone. Happy August. So I'll start kind of on our main Stockton page. So this is our main community page. And just here in the corner here, if you select Stockton running action items, it'll take you to the link to this sheet in this tracker. And it has, like Gabby said, it has been a minute, but I'll just remind folks that these items are separated out by pending and completed items. And so I'll go over the ones that are pending from our last meeting, which I know it's been a minute. So just as like an early spoiler to everyone, a lot of these are related to tonight's meeting. But the first one here, Air District will prioritize providing an update on air quality measures and status of the implementation of our community air monitoring network. And so the first presentation we'll have is John Klassen and Brad Dawson will be doing an air monitoring update. Air District will pause EV applications until outreach committee and CSC members have the opportunity to participate in mapping exercises to identify priority areas to install these stations. And so the Air District is working on developing an interactive exercise for the CSC. And then this item, provide one more month, so by today's meeting, for Stockton School District decision makers to respond to implementation of school air filtration systems. And so tonight, the Air District and CSC members have reached out to kind of these Stockton Unified School District staff, and we will provide an update on that at tonight's meeting. And then this item right after it is very related. It's kind of the school bus version of it. And so again, we'll hear an update during tonight's Serp presentation. Also very related, Air District will update Serp based on CSC feedback and bring modifications for a vote at the August 2022 CSC meeting. So again, we'll go over that during our Serp presentation tonight. And finally, for items that are still pending, Air District to share studies related to wood burning, both indoor and outdoor with CSC. And so in June's meeting, there was just a request to share some research related to impacts of switching out kind of from a wood burning device to cleaner options. And so we're looking to get some research together, and we'll update it in this action item when it's complete. And moving on down to our completed items. So back in June, if you all recall, we had a presentation from Dr. Bradman at UC Merced. And part of that presentation, it was just requested of CSC members that you can contact Dr. Bradman or Matt Holmes if you want to volunteer to host an air monitor. And so we've provided links to the emails for Dr. Bradman, Matt, and then also the Google link that was shared during that meeting. And finally, the Air District will work to identify a CSC member who can connect AB617 process to contact Stockton Unified School District. And we actually had one of our CSC members, Jonathan, who did volunteer at that meeting to follow up, and we'll hear again updates during tonight's Serp presentation. Does anyone have any questions about the items? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
This is Gabby. So far, no questions in the chat, but anyone who does have a question can definitely unmute at this time.
And yes, also feel free to pop in the chat. And for now, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Gabby.
Thank
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Gabby again. I'm going to move us on to our next agenda item, which is the air monitoring update coming from, I believe, Brad at the Air District. So again, this is another regular component of our meetings. Tends to be a quarterly update that we hear. And the Air District really uses this opportunity to keep you informed on the air monitoring network implementation. So they might share some information on the data they're collecting. They could request additional support identifying locations for air monitors, things like that. So please do feel free to ask any questions in the chat or kind of as we're receiving updates, we can field questions as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Brad, and I'm not sure if John is also supporting this update. So.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. I'll go ahead and get this started. Hi, everybody. This is John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science with the Air District, and Brad's going to join me in this presentation and give you an update on where we are in implementing the Stockton Community Air Monitoring Network and an overview of some of the data that we've collected so far. So let me go ahead and get this loaded up here for everybody. Okay. So as an overview of what we'd like to talk about this evening, we're going to give you an update on the implementation of the community air monitoring plan for Stockton, let you know which sites are now currently operating, give you an overview of which sites we are still working on, the status of those and next steps. We're going to give an overview of some of the data that's been collected so far and what we're learning from it over these past few months and what we've seen and going forward, and then take some time if you have any questions, comments, or recommendations. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Brad. He's going to give us an update on the status of implementing the sites in the network here, and then talk a bit about the equipment that's operating. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, good evening. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm just going to give a quick update of where we are at in implementing all the rest of the air monitoring sites for the Stockton community. For those who don't know, I'm the supervisor over the air monitoring program. So for Stockton, so I've been out here many times and trying to get the last remaining sites up online. But where we are currently at is in Area A at Hagen Museum. We were able to install that PM 2.5 real-time monitor back in April 4th of this year. As well as in Area C, we have two monitors. One is at the water tank at El Dorado Street and East Clay Street, as well as we have the University Park Carb monitor at the northern part of that Area C. So we have both monitors live in that area. In Area D, we were able to place a monitor at the office of the California Water Service building, and that was deployed on February 16th. Of 2022 as well. And as well, we in Area F, we are still working to try to get a monitor deployed out at Taft Community Center. But in that meantime, we do have the monitor running at the Little Manila Center with the help of the Little Manila Center, granting us the place to put the monitor at. And as well as we recently on May 3rd, deployed another air monitor at the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds. The remaining sites that we are working on is in that Taft Community Center area. We have reached out to the owners of that community center of the San Joaquin County, and they have it set for an agenda item in October to bring to their board to grant us ability to place the monitor there. So we are kind of working with them, making sure that their board item runs smoothly in October. But we are in conversations with the county on that, as well as Conway Homes. We are kind of going back and forth with Conway Homes or that KIPP school in the Conway Homes community right there. I would like to say a huge shout out to Jonathan Pruitt for also reaching out to some of those staff members and getting them involved with us and helping get the ball rolling and starting that communication and seeing where we can do or what we can do to get those monitors out as quick as possible. And finally, to touch on Zone A, that's the Boggs Tract. We have gotten electrical quotes for that area. We have ran the the job to the Edible Schoolyards, who rents the land currently. They are in agreement of where we can place the monitor and how we would do the electrical setup. And we are just waiting on final confirmation from the Port of Stockton to get final approval there so we can move forward with the electrical contracts and get that monitor deployed. So a lot of exciting moving parts right now. Some things are kind of stalemated and we're just kind of waiting for that time to come by. But yeah, really exciting. Hopefully we can fully develop in a couple of months.
Brad, this is Gabby. I'm seeing Jonathan having his hand raised, so wondering if he might have a question about the update you just shared.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is Jonathan Pruitt. Question to you, Brad. Was there any update that came up for the city's community center, Van Buskirk? I connected with you guys with Susan. Just wanted to make sure there was something that came out of those emails.
I believe at this point they are still working. She is in communication with my manager, Chai Tao, and they are still waiting to hear any further updates regarding that. I know initially we were denied at Van Buskirk, but that doesn't mean that it can't change. But I know that those are communications that are ongoing. I think they are waiting to hear back. We are waiting to hear back from some people that may have been on vacations or something like that. I'm not 100% certain on that update, but I know with Conway Homes, we are in contact with some of the upper management with the Housing Authority, and they are reviewing our proposals.
Thank you, Brad. This is Gabby, and I'm seeing Mary Elizabeth also with their hand up.
Certainly.
Thank you. So two questions or one question and a comment. So we are currently not using the mobile monitoring?
Not right now. We did deploy the mobile monitoring van at Little Manila Center prior to deploying a full-time PM 2.5 monitor there. And John will be going over those slides and kind of giving a recap of what we observed from that mobile monitoring. But right now we aren't, right now the mobile monitoring van is not being currently used for the community. Doesn't mean that it can't be used. Usually if we receive a concern or something like that, we can definitely take a mobile monitoring van out there and do some type of monitoring depending on the locations and feasibility for some things. So, but not right now. No, the mobile monitoring van is not currently deployed in Stockton.
Is there a process or is there an internal process that occurs resulting from some kind of notice of potential emission?
No, it's if we hear any concerns from the community, we can definitely start investigating, trying to get the mobile monitoring van out there if there is a specific concern. But usually we utilize the mobile monitoring van to fill in some of those gaps. But right now we haven't really had an initial request for an area yet. But like I said, I don't want to say that we can't do it. It's just that it's not being deployed right now. But we did deploy it when we were trying to get some type of monitoring out there, especially in the wintertime of last year of 2021. So we were able to get the mobile monitoring van at the Little Manila Center and running for, I think, a 3 or 4 month stint.
And this is Jessica. To add to Brad's comments and to even maybe answer further Mary Elizabeth's question, we have in other communities, just because the network has been up longer on our end, based on maybe monitoring samples that are being detected on the other monitors, deployed it kind of in response to something maybe we're seeing as well. And we're open to doing that too. So one of the things I think, to Brad's point, is as we deploy these, or as I even heard, I saw your comments and you asked, oh, did anyone smell smoke? You know, it's possible that's related to a wildfire, but if we're starting to see some regular concerns about air quality in a place where we don't have a monitor, that's the kind of deployment I think Brad's team is happy to do.
Okay, and then thank you. Do we have a monitoring committee?
I don't think we have a regular one that's been meeting. We've so far been able to answer all the questions in this, but we're happy to, if requested, to pull together a separate meeting, maybe based on any questions that come out of the rest of the presentation today.
Okay, and then thank you so much, Scott. I was able to take your picture, and I did locate that carb monitor, and it's in a very nice, well-shaded area and very easy to access. So thank you very much. That's all for me.
Our pleasure. Thanks, and thanks to Karina, who's actually on the call tonight, for pulling that together for us, Mary Elizabeth. Thanks for the acknowledgement. I'm sorry, this was Scott.
That was Mary.
All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and move on here and let Brad take a minute to remind us of the equipment that's operating in the Stockton network.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so just to recap, on the left right here, you can actually see this is a real-time PM 2.5 monitor. This is actually taken on the roof of that of the Cal Water office building. So this is one of your monitors that is deployed. So just to kind of give yourself if you're ever in these areas and you see something poking up along the roof line, this is what they look like. On the right-hand side is a picture of our multi-pollutant monitor, where there's individual racked instruments inside of it, all running together. So those are going to be the sites that are the Stockton tank site, as well as the Stockton Fairgrounds site will have these there. So if you're over at the fairgrounds, you can definitely see that one over at the fairgrounds, especially if you're buying some churros or enjoying the fair over there. And again, here's on the left is actually the picture of the tank site, where we have our PM 2.5 monitor installed right next to that air pointer. And then to the right of that is what our full air monitoring trailer will look like. That's the trailer that we will be taking to Boggs Tract. So we have that currently in storage. The picture that you are seeing right now is the one that we've deployed for the Fresno community, but yours is almost identical to this. So we will be hopefully deploying this soon to that Boggs Tract area. And then here's some continued pictures. This is the mobile monitoring van when we had it deployed over at the Little Manila Center. And since then, we have been able to deploy a real-time PM 2.5 monitor there. You can see that we had to add an extra long inlet so we can make sure that we were above that fence line and getting accurate PM 2.5 readings from that site. And currently, if you go onto the community air monitoring webpage based off of your Stockton AB617 page, you can see a live interactive map with all of our regulatory and community-based monitors. It will zoom into your community, so that way you can actually select the actual individual sites, and that site will pull up and you would be able to see all that information in real time. This one is a little behind because we haven't updated to put the fairgrounds on there, but the fairgrounds link is available. It's just not clickable on this website at this time. So we're all up and running except for those last 3 sites that we're working on getting up and running.
All right, great. Thanks, Brad, for the update. And I'm going to go to the next few slides here. And this is John, and I'm going to give an update on some of the data that's been collected in Stockton over the past few months. This first chart here shows daily PM 2.5 averages across the community. And we go in time from left to right. So on the left-hand side, this is early March. You can see there's a few sites already operating. Then we go forward in time to the right into July. And you see as time goes on, you see more and more sites coming online as we continue to get more data across the community. I wanted to note here on the left-hand side, you can see the Cal water tank, that green line, some of those higher values in March. This was during a time when right when we got the site, it was put into place. There's a lot of construction happening right by the site that was directly impacting some of those readings over those first week or so. That really drove some of those higher values there at Cal Water back in March. And then as you go to the right, you see more sites coming online. But I did want to note here that at the top here, we have that 35 microgram line. That's the federal 24-hour standard. That's the health standard that EPA set for PM 2.5. You can see the variation through this time period, but we never had a value over that number, which is good to see for the Stockton area. On the 4th of July, we're showing what we saw hourly averages for PM 2.5 on the 4th of July in Stockton across these sites. And I'm sure as you experience, concentrations can get very high on the 4th of July and carry over into the next day. And so we saw higher values here. The evening of the 4th, we had hourly concentrations above 50 micrograms, and you can see it decline as the evening goes on. And this is what we saw other parts of the valley as well. We saw higher values on the 4th that evening, and then they come down the next day. But we did see some pretty high values here in Stockton on the 4th of July. This is another look that we are developing, and we've been using this for the for the Fresno, South Central Fresno and Shafter updates to that community, is looking at more of a heat map approach to the different pollutants that are being measured. And so this is an example for PM 2.5 for Stockton. If you look up at the top of the slide, you see the table with the green and the yellow markings there. Each of these little skinny rectangles is a different day of the month, and then it's colored based on the air quality index for that day for PM 2.5. So if it's a green color, air quality was good on that day, and if it's yellow, that was moderate. And then it can be different colors. It could be orange if it's unhealthy for sensitive, and so forth. So you can see the different sites operating, see the different time periods, the variation here. But most of the period here was at good air quality, which is usually what we expect in the springtime, early summer, throughout the valley and up in Stockton.
John, this is Gabby. I'm noticing Mary Elizabeth might have a question related to what you just shared.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thank you. And this will be the last one. I'll just step back. I'm just wondering, there was some chat that I had run into in regards to the 4th of July situation, and some other times when you look at the Stockton University Park, it all shows green. But, in the purple monitors, and I'm seeing over here in some of these monitors as well, some potential problems in relation to strictly PM 2.5. And I'm just wondering, is there, have you done some analysis, or are these other regarding, some possible reasons for, why the Stockton University Park is, showing all green, whereas some of these other of your own monitoring devices are showing some moderate, and then how that relates to these purple monitors, that were definitely showing, some high readings on the 4th of July and some of the preceding days. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Great question. Yeah, certainly looking at this table here, you can see a number of yellow days for the Cal Water site early on. Some of these values here are impacted by nearby sources and issues, like at Cal Water, there was construction happening right next to the monitor. The fairgrounds had a few festivals and activities there that could have impacted some of the readings there. And I just want to say it's early in the data here. We've only seen a few months here. We've been seeing in Shafter and South Central Fresno, and now we have a couple years of data in those networks. And so now we're starting to see some regular patterns and trends, giving us more confidence as we see a lot more data coming in. So certainly as more data keeps coming in for Stockton up here, if we continue to see different patterns, we can see why are certain areas higher than others more consistently. What's the reason for that, and how can that help drive the strategy from the Serp? How can we redirect different pieces of that or funding to help attack different problems? So we're going through that right now with the other communities, and based on what we're learning from the data. So I could see some of that same happening here as we get more comfortable and more confidence with the data we're seeing. That can help kind of redirect some of our approach for some of the Serp.
John, this is Jess. Can you describe just a little bit of why folks might see on a map a difference between like purple air sensor data and our data? Maybe like the time frame might be different for the types of data it's pulling in.
Yeah, definitely. And as a lot of you are probably aware, the purple air data, it's not going to be as accurate as these monitors. These are more professional grade monitors, so they're going to be more accurate. The purple air, there's a lot of effort, of course, to try to correct purple air data, to try to make it more accurate, but oftentimes that data is biased high, naturally, just based on the methodology of that instrument. And so that's just something to keep in mind too, that the purple air could be reading higher than these monitors or the Stockton University Park, but different methodologies between the equipment can give you different answers.
I also found sometimes, just anecdotally, this is Jess again, that when I go on the Purple Air site, it automatically defaults, at least for me, to a 10-minute average, which can sometimes just be higher, but over the course of an hour, my average down. And the stuff that we're reporting here is an hourly average, just by the nature of the type of equipment we're using. So that sometimes I feel, for me anyway, is the variability when I check at any one moment.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. That's good. And actually in this table here, we're showing a 24-hour average. So even more variation between a purple air showing just the past few minutes versus an average for the whole day. Just showing the same sort of data here across the sites, an average for the period. So here are all the sites that are operating in Stockton. On the left-hand side, we show our highest 24-hour average during this period from March through July 20th. So no value here is above the federal standard, which is good. Then on the right, we show the average over this whole period. And you can see some variation there. Like I mentioned, it's early. We're starting to see some differences, but as we get more and more data, we'll have more confidence in these differences we're seeing and start to work to pinpoint why we might be seeing some differences here. And then looking at the same data here over the different months, the averages across the sites, you can see back in March, like we mentioned before, the Cal water tank values were quite a bit higher because of all the construction nearby. Then you see those values come down and it's more in line with the other sites in Stockton. And then you can see the fairgrounds being a bit higher the past few months, a lot of activity at the fairgrounds. We'll keep seeing that this is a regular pattern, but we're starting to watch these monthly trends to see what differences we are seeing in PM 2.5. And again, all these values are below, even though there's a variation here, all the values here are below that 12 microgram average at the top of the chart. That's the federal standard for a long-term average over the entire year. So we're seeing all these monthly values below 12, which is good to see at this point. Just the last few slides here, just an overview of DOC speciation work that was done at the Little Manila Center. This is done through different canisters that were sent through a laboratory where they could speciate the types of volatile organic compounds that were occurring in the area, and those sorts of emissions can contribute towards ozone production. So looking at the different types of those compounds that were in the samples, the two most common were methanol and acetaldehyde, both coming from automobile exhaust, exhaust fumes, wood combustion, different sources like that. The takeaway from this table here is that the values we saw both on the short term for a one-day average and in the long term over this entire period, they were all below the different health thresholds that are set by UEHA. So no concerning values from what we saw from the VOC readings over this period. And just another overview here of all the data that was collected from the van at the Little Manila Center over this last winter season. A lot of numbers in here, but essentially what this is showing for all the different pollutants that both on the 1 hour average time frame and then the long-term average for the whole period, we were below many of these health thresholds, which is good to see. We did have one high value here for PM 2.5, 109 microgram hourly value. This is not a 24-hour, this is a 1 hour value, which was an evening peak that could have been driven by some sort of burning activity in the area. And then if you go to the right, you see the average there of 17.9. That is higher than that 12 microgram average that's set by the EPA, but this is a winter season average. I wanted to point that out. This is a winter season average when we normally see higher numbers. And then as we get more values through the rest of the year, we get lower monthly averages based on like the data that we just looked a few slides ago. And so as it all averages out, usually Stockton is below that 12 microgram average, but this is just a winter season number. So last few points here, just a link here to the community air monitoring webpage on our website that has all the data for all of our communities, including Stockton, where you can see the real-time data that Brad was talking about. We post data from the bands that we collect. We've been doing this for Shafter and South Central Fresno, but we will soon be posting quarterly reports for Stockton that summarizes this sort of data, weekly air monitoring updates so that everybody can see different trends from week to week. And then we have a link here to CARB's AQView data portal where data is available there across all the communities across the state, including the valleys, communities that's available there as well. So we'll go ahead and stop there and see if there are any other comments or questions.
Thank you, John and Brad. I just want to note that we are a little bit over time. So wanting to recognize that folks might have a lot of passion around this subject and maybe make a recommendation for folks to add more questions to the chat and have some of those questions be answered on there. But Jess, just wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to add.
I agree that we'll start to answer some of those questions. I will say one of the questions, Mary Elizabeth had a great question that I will further answer with links in the chat. But just to describe a little bit of the health impacts, we have a linked to those levels that John described. We have worked, and actually one of our, we had a health science advisor whose job it was to work with health researchers and doctors to develop guidelines based on Mary Elizabeth's question of like what levels might impact folks when they're doing outdoor activities. So I'm going to drop a little bit more detail in that. But essentially, we have sort of guidelines on how people should respond based on those levels. And that's actually the basis for that whole real-time system that we have. So that's just some background for some of the information we'll drop in the chat. And with that, similarly, yeah, we're happy to answer all the chat questions as well.
Thank you, Jess. This is Gabby. And then I'm just wondering if there are any key themes, if maybe we can extract those and send them via email for folks who don't have easy access to the chat and would need a different format to be informed on any of that conversation.
I think that's a great idea. We'd be happy to sort of send a quick summary, maybe a link to this presentation we just shared, a link to all of our live data, as well as that health information.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Jess, and thank you to the rest of the Air District staff, Brad and John, for sharing this update, and also folks who are contributing very thoughtful questions throughout the presentation. I do want to move us along to the main agenda item here for today. That's going to take just about an hour, I think, of our time together. And this is the Serp incentives measure follow-up presentation. So the Air District and Jonathan will be providing an update on those incentives measures, both the school buses and the air filtration. And that is a continuation of the conversation from the June meeting. So first you can expect to hear some of those updates related to the school buses. And then afterward, you'll get some updates around the air filtration, followed with some opportunities for us to brainstorm next steps together. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it off to Jess to kick us off with this part of the agenda.
Absolutely. So thank you. And I think Gabby set it up really well. So I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. And I'm going to jump right in. We, at our last meeting, had sort of two actions related to school district participation in our Serp process. So the first action I'm going to update us on, and I will also welcome Marcus Battle. He is here with us from Stockton Unified specifically to help support this discussion about school buses. And I'm going to share an exciting update, and then of course invite Marcus if you'd like to also kind of support what I'm about to say. But as you all know, we have $4 million in the Serp for school buses, up to 10 buses, which we're hoping will reduce about 18 tons of NOx within the community. It has been open for funding, and as you all know, we've been in contact. Stockton Unified has been interested, and as we all know from working with various folks, there have been staffing changes and other folks, and definitely a lot of work on Stockton's part to try to help us complete those applications. The update today is that applications are nearly complete. And really one of the last steps from my understanding is that Stockton Unified has to prepare an item to take to their board. Of course, accepting this amount of money is something that is usually approved by some sort of board, and that's the next step. And unless I'm wrong, Marcus, from my understanding, it's August 9th, which is next Tuesday. And from there, we're happy, to work with you all just to constantly update you on those actions and next steps from Stockton, and maybe even provide an email update after any action is hopefully taken next Tuesday. So with that, I will actually maybe stop sharing my screen because sometimes I find it's easier to see faces. And see if Marcus, I know that you're here with us, and definitely if there's anything that you want to add to the update I just provided, or just introduce yourself. I know the committee's really excited to have you here today.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yes, Marcus Battle, and I'm the Chief Business Official for Stockton Unified. And the reason that I'm here tonight, our Director of Transportation just recently moved on. So I am trying to help fill some of the gaps for right now, along with one of my director of facilities, Armando Orozco. So you may see him at a future meeting. But you are correct, Jessica. We are. You guys sent us that resolution, so we have already prepared that for our board for next week, and very enthusiastically hoping that our board receives it well. And as you said, they should, because it is, I'm sure as this group knows, I mean, we have quite a few of the electric buses at this point through various grants. And we are very excited for this program and very excited to get these buses. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. So definitely the rest of the presentation is focused on sort of moving funding around related to transportation, which is certainly, I think, in a different place than school buses. And so with that, I don't know if any questions for Marcus before we move to school air filtration. Just knowing that, of course, we will continually, as we always do, provide updates on the status of this program, just like all other incentives programs moving forward.
Can I comment on the school bus? This is Gabriel Heitman with Bluebird.
Please.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm at the airport. I just wanted to reiterate with Marcus that this has been a true dedication between Bluebird and Stockton Unified. And being part of this from the ground up, it really has been a true buy-in from the entire district, from the board all the way down to the drivers. So this project has been extremely successful, and there has been some personnel changes, but the dedication on behalf of Stockton Unified has not waffled. So we're going to continue to partner and support Marcus and his team on the buses, and it is just, Stockton really put the EV on the map, and it's just great for the community. So it's we thank all the grant partners as well as Stockton Unified for developing this team.
Thank you. I think that hopefully lots of support. I saw a great question in the chat, and I'm wondering, Erin, can you just describe when someone gets any partner, Stockton and just across the board, how any partner gets funding for school buses? What is the process? How do we verify they're using the electric buses? What do they have to do with the old buses? Can you kind of walk us through it really briefly?
Yeah, I'll walk you through just the basics of it. Is we have a contract with the school district, in this case, Stockton Unified. We identified the old bus that they're going to get rid of with VIN numbers and pictures, verify that it's actually CHP certified to be on the road, make sure they're using it. So a couple things happen there. We will have a contract with them to offer, and they agreed to purchase the new bus, whatever that one is. It sounds like Bluebird's on the line here. It might be a Bluebird electric bus. So we'll contract them for the amount of money we agreed to based on the quote of the new bus, and we'll kind of work that out with Stockton Unified. But the max grant amount is $400,000. That should cover The majority of the bus. It should cover 95 to 100% of the cost of the bus, we hope. And once they purchase the new bus, they will submit an invoice to us and take the old bus to a licensed dismantler. Actually, this license with DMV. We'll get a Reg 42 form. It's basically what that means is that we actually physically in DMV it shows that bin went away. It's now destroyed and gone. We also get a picture of it destroyed as well, the engine and the rails, frame rails on the bus cut, to verify it will never come back again. Once we verify all that, we verify the new ones in practice, and it's been certified CHP to be on the road. They need a recertification with the CHP 292 form as well. Once we verify that, we will issue payment to Stockton Unified for the bus on the agreed upon amount in the contract, depends on the quote amount of the bus. So that's how all grants kind of work in a nutshell. That was kind of quick and down and dirty, but that's the basics of it.
So meaning that we do not pay anyone for the school bus unless we have verified that the old bus is crushed and they have taken delivery of the new bus.
We verify that. Yes, we're very stringent upon that, because without that, this whole thing doesn't work. So that is forefront of every grant program we operate. Correct. It's got to be in service. The other one's got to be destroyed before we issue any payment to anybody. Yes.
Awesome. And then I see Mary Elizabeth's question, and it's actually a question that has come up in all the CSCs, and something we're going to commit to moving forward is we will actually report out all of our projects once they're any grant project that we do through 617 once they're funded. So you'll know immediately and up to date and as frequently as we want. So including monthly if needed. We'll just always report out who's received money and how much money they've received and for which program. So that will include school buses from Mary Elizabeth's question.
Yeah, we're working on that right now to verify some things. We'll have it for all of the communities that we operate here in the Valley. So we're finalizing that as we speak, and that will be actually posted on the website, sir.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all so much, and definitely thank you, Marcus and Mr. Heitman. I really appreciate the support, and it sounds like we're excited to move forward. And I think the steering committee rather is really excited to hear the next steps. So with that, I have kind of in a different flavor and sort of in a different discussion that we've had, and definitely a little more complicated, is school air filtration. And this is complicated. It's been complicated across the whole Valley. And we all know, just by way of brief background, that school air filtration was launched kind of right when COVID started. And it kind of became this thing where all of the school districts across the state were getting a lot of funding from the state or from the federal government to support air filtration projects beyond sort of the efforts we were thinking with 617. And so many of the districts have had some issues thinking of how they would incorporate 617 funding, or haven't been interested in pursuing it, the 617 funding, because they already did some work on their school air filtration systems with that other funding. So working with the facilities team is, I think just with COVID and a variety of other reasons, we haven't been able to get a clear answer from Stockton Unified, particularly about this. And then the Aspire Academy charter schools, there are 2 schools in the boundary that would qualify, because technically they're public charter schools. We did get in contact with them, and they are not interested in pursuing this funding. And so you all asked us to just sort of describe, and I definitely, obviously we have some Stockton Unified folks here, so maybe this can, maybe this is a different conversation than we were prepared for, but just describe for you kind of the work that we've done to reach out to, particularly to the facilities folks, and kind of how we're moving forward. And so that is this next step, although I'm happy to take comments and questions and anything different once I share this slide. But in working and reaching out to folks, and again, we all know, and we've heard several times, that there have been a lot of staffing changes, even up to the superintendent level at Stockton. So that might be complicating folks' responses to us. But after a lot of outreach, and you can just kind of see it enumerated here, and I know several folks on the CSC have also done some outreach, it doesn't feel like there's a big interest in Stockton Unified pursuing the particular type of air filtration program that we're offering. And so you as a CSC are certainly welcome to support or make recommendations to shift funding around. And so we have a couple of exercises right now that will help us gauge your recommendation for next steps. So just to preview before we even get there, one of the recommendations will first be whether we continue to pursue or don't continue to pursue. And the reason is not just if the Stockton Unified is interested, but also because, as we've talked about the past couple of meetings, there's also timelines with this funding, and we need to kind of sooner than later decide as a group if we want to shift the funding to make sure we spend it in time. So that's sort of the discussion that we're going to have today. And I actually will stop sharing my screen really quickly. I do see Marcus, and I'm super excited to have Marcus kind of support and speak a little bit to it. And then I'll also, after this, pass it to Jonathan and Gabby to facilitate kind of the next part of the discussion. So Marcus, please, I saw your hand.
Yeah, and I want to say this is the first time I'm hearing of this, unfortunately. And I know I understand where you all are in your process. I would say that at this point, those funds probably should be reallocated. Last year, our district the board did pass an agenda item, and we purchased air filtration devices for each one of our schools. And those are still in process. And it was a total of about $7 million.
Wow.
So and that may be some of the reason why you were getting folks dragging their foot, because and we appreciate that we were considered for this as a district, very appreciative. But I would say that you all could probably designate it for something else. And I'm sure there's a lot of need out there. And I say that confidently because, like I said, we have a very robust program right now to get all of our classrooms with the devices that we've purchased. So,
Marcus, that was such a great update and something I know the committee has been really eager to hear. I know I agree with you. I think all of our intuition, especially given that, of course, you are not the only school district we've been working with, kind of told us the same thing. A lot of school districts have had the same and just almost been inundated with all of this different funding and reporting and spending requirements. So I think a lot of folks are happy to hear that. I do see one chat question. If you do have any insight as to the timing of when some of that's going to be deployed, that just happens to be a question in the chat. If you have any insight on that.
Well, the timing is, I would say right now, it's our air filtration devices have been deployed in about 65% of our schools. We have, I think, about 35% remaining. And I think, I think you guys, if you follow the news, there was a news article where they showed a bunch of them in a warehouse collecting dust. And so the company that was installing those devices could no longer install. So we have to, within our own guidelines, we have to do a bid to bid out the remaining devices to get installed. And I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 800 more devices that need to be installed. So that's why we are where we are right now. And somebody, the news likes news. They like to sell newspapers. They like to, to get everybody interested and excited. So, but yeah, we do have a plan to complete that project.
That is such great news. Again, just knowing this committee and knowing kind of the status updates that folks are interested in, Marcus, I think that was such a great summary of where you're at. And I know folks, if they have further questions, I'm sure they can throw it in the chat. We do, and I kind of, with almost like the support from Mr. Battle here, have some questions for you all as CSC members on kind of next steps. And so I think at this point, turning it to Gabby and Jonathan to start that process is where we'll be. And just again, Marcus, please stay on if you can, but I just want to thank you so much. I think everything you just shared with us has really helped us move along.
Yeah, and guys, this was added on my schedule at the last minute, and I do have other things I have to attend to. But in the future, I mean, please, Jessica, feel free to reach out to me. If you're not getting anywhere, I'm really attuned to what's going on in my division, so I can give you guys updates just like I'm doing tonight.
We'd love that. Yes, we might put the recurring meeting on your calendar, but definitely I'll check in with you, Marcus, and we're happy that I think maybe found the right person. So that's so great to hear.
And just to tell you guys, it's very rarely that a CBO turns down money. Very rarely. But I think those dollars can be better used. So I would encourage you guys to come up with some great ideas to use that. And it was nice meeting everybody this evening, seeing everybody in this active environment that you guys work in. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, you too.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Jess. This is Gabby once again. So I want to move us toward thinking about how the CSC can collectively move toward deciding the next steps here. So we heard you clear feedback on the June meeting about wanting to use this time to move toward collective action, making a decision, identifying those next steps. So what we have prepared for you here today is a poll to start to gather your feedback on a few important questions about where we go from here. And especially having heard such transparent and helpful information from Stockton Unified School District right now, I think we can use all of that as we're responding to these questions. We do ask that only CSC members or alternates respond to this poll. So I'm just going to repeat that one more time in case some folks couldn't catch that. So please, only CSC members or alternates respond to this poll. And we're going to try using Zoom poll. We did a quick inventory of the folks here, and it seems like everybody joined either by a mobile app or tablet computer. It seems like we don't have any call-ins at this time, so we're going to try using the Zoom poll. But if any CSC member is having issues responding, you can always message me directly if you feel most comfortable, or anyone from the Air District, and we can tally that in to the questions that we're asking you here today. So we're going to launch a test question because we know that trying to use a piece of technology that you may not use regularly can be tricky. So Jen here will be launching the first test question just to make sure everything's working. And again, we're asking that only CSC members respond to this poll. Jen, let us know when you're able to get it going. And
I did launch it, so let me know if it's not appearing on your end. And the question should read, what is your favorite meal of the day? Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yes, this is Jonathan. Just want to let you guys know that the poll shows all of them all at once, not just one by one. It's showing 8 of the questions.
Jonathan, are you a co-host maybe?
No, I don't think Jonathan is a co-host. I think those of us who are co-hosts are not able to see the poll. And then those of us who are hosts, and then regular folks are able to see all of the questions at once.
Poll's gone.
So I'm wondering if we could pivot to trying to use another piece of technology that we prepared for you here today, just so that we can do the questions one by one, if that's okay with everyone. So we have a backup form of a poll. Jem, go ahead and take it away, and I'll drop some information in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. And thanks everyone for your patience as we maneuver. You'd think after, 3 years of doing virtual, we'd get this down, but technology. So we're going to use a Zoom, poll everywhere. It'll allow access for anyone either wanting to access it through their computer, tablet, or phone. So I'll explain very quickly the 2 ways you can access the voting mechanism, and then I'll share my screen to show you what it looks like. So there are 2 ways you can access this poll. You'll have to either create a new browser if you want to join through your tablet or computer, and you will enter this link, which I will put in the chat, or it's already in the chat. Thank you. pollev.com/AB617. So if you want to enter that in a browser, if you're using, even if you want to use your phone, but a computer, tablet, enter that and it'll give you access. It'll ask for your name. That your name won't show in your response, but it'll allow us to track to ensure you're a CSC member. The alternative way you can join this poll is by texting AB617 to the number 37607, and that appears on the chat as well. Again, you can enter your votes by text or join the poll, by texting AB617 to the phone number 37607. Douglas, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I just don't understand what happened. I was already, it was more simpler for me to put the poll. So you got it, the poll just popped, and I just clicked it and multiple choice question, and it was very simple. I don't understand why we have to delay and put it somewhere else in the church when we already have the majority of residents or that are in the meetings, instead of making it more harder to look for the polls or the voting system. And right here, which we don't have to share it right away, but at least we could have some kind of poll that is already this, and then somebody wants to poll somewhere else, that's fine with me too. So that's something that was I'm a little concerned about that. That's all.
Okay, I hear you. I'm gonna look to my colleague as well. Gabby, should we just keep it, and Jonathan, also the co-host, should we stay on Zoom even though the questions are displayed? Okay, we see some comments supporting Doug's suggestion. So want to make it as easeful for you all. Also looking at Gabby and Jonathan.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful feedback, Doug, that we apologize for the inconvenience. So the goal really is to have a series of questions that we're asking with a little bit of pauses in between for discussion. And so unfortunately, Zoom is showing us everything all at once, which doesn't allow us to share presentation material with you, ask questions, for it to be a little bit more interactive. But I hear you all. If it is feeling too complicated, we can switch to just maybe even conversation. And but Jess, did you have a recommendation?
I think maybe what you just said makes sense. I wonder if we just start with, we can do conversation and folks can maybe use their reaction buttons, just so everyone knows a lot of the stuff tonight. If we're not feeling like the reaction buttons are working, we can certainly do more of a vote. But I think given some of the conversations we're having, reaction buttons might work well, if that's okay with you too, Jonathan.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, I think given that feedback, let's go ahead and move toward doing reaction buttons. But maybe, Jen, what we can do is share our screen with the poll everywhere so that the questions are showing as folks are reacting maybe, or you can also comment in the chat. So I think either way works. So ignore that there's instructions for how to join the poll. We're just sharing our screen. It's basically a slide deck. So we're going to start off with this first real question, which is, how would you like to proceed with these school incentives air filtration measures? So if you would like to continue pursuing outreach with SUSD for air filtration, maybe you can give us a thumbs up in as a reaction button, or put the letter A in the chat. And if you would like to explore opportunities to allocate the use of these funds differently, maybe we can do, what are the other reactions? Maybe we can do the clap, and that's how we'll keep track, or you can type B in the chat. So I'm seeing an overwhelming amount of Bs. And Cynthia, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just comment/question. Can we choose either do reactions or do the chat, so that way we're not, folks aren't missing in there? And then I would prefer to do the chat, so that way we can go back and look at what kind of everybody said.
That's an excellent suggestion, Cynthia. And I think most folks are in agreement with you. So let's go ahead and use the chat.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for pivoting and being flexible. We appreciate that. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of folks leaning toward option B, and that is super helpful. So I think what we're going to do next is do some thinking about how we can use this information that folks clearly want to move in a different direction. How can we have a conversation about that that's focusing on where folks' priorities are, where the values are for the CSC. So I'm going to actually hand it off to Jonathan to kind of guide us through that process, and we'll have another question for you related to that.
Thank you, Gabby. This is Jonathan Pruitt. So now that we pretty much majority of folks have, or we've gotten the consensus from it being B, now the goal of this question is really to understand collectively as a group, where should we now prioritize that fund to? And so there are many areas or many sort of avenues we can go about this, but I want to sort of get a feel from everyone. There's about sort of 5 ways that we could go about this, and it will be shared onto the screen. This really will help to make sure that we get a really good sense of the priorities that we want to go about this. Once this funding is going out there, which of the projects are going to get pretty much the funding, which incentive projects are going to be able to get the funding. Now, Gabby, are you able to put on the screen?
Absolutely. Jem is going to put it on for us, this next question. So we'll go ahead and let you walk us through what we mean here.
Sure. So based off of this, which of the following considerations is really important to you guys? First, we have minimizing emissions exposure for children. This is really saying that you really want to reallocate the funds with the caveat that it is going to minimize emissions among the children. One of them being air filtration systems, which is one of our incentive programs. The other question, or the other area, is maximizing emissions reductions in Serp. And if this is your priority, that means really focusing on a solution that has most overall emissions reductions, and regardless of who is the most impacted by those reductions. Okay, so that is a caveat, and do know that. Pursuing solutions that protect communities as soon as possible. So this is now more on a timeline basis. This means, just what it means. And so we have to be prepared that this is a relatively, based off a short timeline. So if we want to get a project that will be able to get going as soon as possible, that's the case that this is doing. This is the case that this aspect is going for. Ensuring the funds are allocated as soon as possible. This is a little bit different because you're most interested in ensuring we allocate and spend down the money soon, regardless how long it takes to carry out the implementation. And then pursuing the route with most established partnerships. This one really is to focus on the solutions with the already trusted community partnerships that have been established throughout, the Stockton area, and trying to assess which ones could be leveraged. So from there, we'll see what the votes from the chat are about.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is Gabby. So yeah, if we can just go top to bottom, A, B, C, D, E, that would be the easiest way to get input. And I wanted to just elevate something that Jess put in the chat, which is that we don't need consensus on this. This is really to help gauge what values are most important to the CSC, and especially as the Air District and Jonathan here present a couple potential solutions your way, using these values to inform those decisions, right? So are these solutions capturing the values that are most important to you? And recognizing that these are not mutually exclusive categories. So there may be a solution where you're minimizing emissions exposure for children and you're pursuing a solution that's protecting communities as soon as possible. Like that could be true, right? And in the same way, there might be a solution where you're maximizing emissions reductions in the Serp and you're pursuing a route with the most established partnerships. So really, as you answer this, it really helps us to understand what is most important to you, recognizing that all of these things are important. And I see, Clifton, you have your hand raised, so please share any thoughts.
Hi, yeah, I like what you said, that these are not mutually exclusive. And I just wanted to give the example of planting trees. That was the first thing that jumped to my mind for reallocating fund, especially because trees provide the original goal of filtering air. So we could still filter air and fulfill kind of all these different things at once. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of toss that out there while we were talking about different considerations.
Absolutely. Thank you for such a clear example and for reinforcing that perspective that a lot of these solutions can definitely incorporate a lot of these values. Thanks for walking us through that question, Jonathan. I think I'll just share that the Air District is going to share a couple of solutions that they've already began to brainstorm with you. So that's this next part of the presentation, is just some potential ideas about where we go from here, and we'll be taking your input throughout. Clifton, I noticed your hand is still raised. I wasn't sure if you had a comment or if it just never got lowered.
Oh, nope, just never got lowered.
Oh, good. Thanks for confirming.
Yep.
Well, this was so helpful, I think, to not only get clear direction, and actually one of the slides I'm about to present is already done, because we got clear direction from you all on wanting to move forward. It sounded like even with Stockton's support to move forward to reallocate the air filtration funding. And then hopefully doing this last question helped you kind of decide your priorities. We have three general, well, a couple of specific, and then one general recommendation based on what we've already heard from you. So we're hoping, in this slide I'm sharing with you, this is a summary of the next 4 slides. So this is not a slide for, we do not need to make all of these decisions in one. We're going to walk through one by one, but just a summary of the original funding in the school air filtration measure, and sort of 3 recommendations based on what we've heard already. And we know this is not comprehensive of everyone's sort of thoughts on reallocating funding, but just a starting point from kind of the most frequent recommendations we've heard so far. So I'm just going to share, summarize really quickly, and then we'll go through a set of slides that will help you all tell us sort of yes or no by consensus what your CSC recommendation is for moving the funding. We will not be reallocating all of the funding tonight, but some of it certainly specifically. So the first is that we've heard from several folks, and we'll go through this slide in a moment, about adding funding to the lawn and garden measures. So we'll walk you through that. The second is about increasing the funding amount. And again, you'll see this in the more details in the next slide, about making it more affordable so folks don't have to pay out of pocket for fireplace replacement. And the third recommendation we've heard, although we don't have a specific amount yet because we haven't even launched this program, so we really don't know where it stands, is to allocate some of the funding to residential air filtration. And definitely something that we want to work really closely with the subcommittee on identifying maybe what that funding could look like and how it can support the same principles that we were using in the school air filtration measure for this residential air filtration measure. These are not our only options. And at the end of the presentation, we also have a poll that we're going to do where we ask you for more ideas that we can then develop specific recommendations, perhaps for the next meeting to vote on. So I'm going to walk one by one through each of these, but I do see Mary's hand and I'm happy to take a question.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood what you said is, so tonight, we are reallocating some amount of money.
Correct. We are already asking for you to recommend that. So if for some reason you all there's no consensus over that, we do not have to, but yes, tonight we are hoping right now to reallocate some of this school air filtration money, since just now we got the feedback from you all that that folks are comfortable with not funding the school air filtration. I hope that
looks like that answered her question. I saw Mary's hand go down, but please feel free to chime in, Mary, if you have any follow-up comments or thoughts.
Thank you so much. I am going to share my next slide, which I already changed based on the poll we just took. So the first question we had for you was, are you comfortable or would you like to move the funds out of air filtration, or would you like to continue to work with them? Hopefully we all agree based on the consensus. I saw almost exclusively Bs, including a support from the school district that they didn't feel like they could effectively use the funding. So unless there's questions about this, I'm happy to move on to the next slide, which is actually the first question about where to move some of the funding to. And so Gabby, if you can help me, I don't see any questions.
Yeah, Jess, this is Gabby. I'm not seeing any questions. I just want to elevate a quick comment in the chat from Nate, believing that to your reference to your prior slide, that options A and B can be implemented to more people faster than option C.
I see. Well, what we're hoping to do today is we could technically, and that's a great point, for each one of these, we could vote yes on all of them. We have with 2.6 million, the first two slides I'll share are a much lower amount than 2.6, so we could vote yes on both. And then the third slide is just to support moving funding to residential air filtration, and I'll describe what that means in a second. So I do appreciate Nate's support though on kind of the earlier question about motivation. So I'm just going to go straight to this slide, and I'm going to look to you, Gabby. Folks can either put yes or no. I think that's the clearest way to make your voice heard. Of course, we can also take comments and questions. But the first question is, of the 2.6 million that we are not going to use for school air filtration, we have heard that right now in the Serp, there is only enough funding for 50 mowers. And since Serp implementation has started, folks have been very interested and vocal, certainly in our outreach subcommittee, of partnering with us and significantly increasing this, especially since we've seen a lot of great response in our other communities. We have already, every time we've done an event, within a couple of hours, we run out of about 100, 150 lawnmowers. And so the goal here would be to add 225,000 from that 2.6 to increase the amount from 50 to about 450. So adding essentially 400 lawnmowers to this measure. So I don't know if there's questions, if folks want a little bit more information, but certainly it's been a question and a concern and a recommendation actually for several months now from folks. And so we felt like this was a good opportunity to make that decision together. I do see Clifton's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I don't think it's a good idea, being that we're in a historic drought and we already have enough people watering their lawns and mowing them. So it just doesn't seem like a good thing to encourage. If it was like native plant landscaping or xeriscaping, maybe rebates for that, I would support that, but not for lawnmowers.
Okay, I definitely hear Clifton's concern, and I think a lot of us understand kind of the drought situation we're in. I'll just provide a little bit of a background, and definitely up to the CSC to provide a recommendation. Just generally, if folks are already using lawnmowers and they are using a gas mower, this would, and just to provide context, would provide an electric mower. So I agree that this obviously does not address Clifton's water concerns, but if we feel that there are already folks using their mowers and they are using gas mowers, this does significantly decrease exposure to the fumes coming off of a gas mower. That was sort of the origination of putting it in the Serp. And it's certainly so far been a benefit to other communities, but that's just sort of some background for folks that wanted to know sort of how we've implemented it so far. Are there other questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Jess. I just want to kind of summarize what I'm seeing in the chat. I think there's a lot of agreement with the points Clifton is making, a lot of folks saying no. And then some of the additional context people are sharing kind of rationale for this. Mary Elizabeth, for example, shared more on commercial. Cynthia shared we need exposure reduction just as much as we need emissions reduction. So she votes no on residential lawn and garden. And then the last piece of comment comes also from Mary Elizabeth. In her walking travels, she sees more commercial use than residential use.
Awesome. This is all great feedback. I don't see any strong support for yes. I will say, based on that feedback, I wonder if it makes sense for a recommendation from us for the next meeting based on your support would be, and it looks like what Ed is just saying, we can come back with a recommendation for commercial, or I'm happy to entertain if folks are interested right now in revamping this question to say commercial and being the same amount, which would provide, just by quick math, could provide a little more than 10 commercial, so really large units to folks that mow the lawns on schools or at public properties.
So I just want to elevate some of what I'm seeing in the chat. So I think there's some folks who want to come back to this question. Some folks are more inclined to move forward if it is commercial. But then I think similar points being made by Clifton about how this continues to encourage wasteful water use and promote, Jennifer shared to promote drought-proof gardens. Cynthia shared that she is more interested in going through some of the other measures than coming back to this.
That sounds, all of that sounds fabulous. So what I'll do is we'll table this. Well, we heard no on residential. So we'll just say definitely it was a no on moving to residential. I think that makes sense to us. And then it sounds like there's still some discussion to be had, maybe with a little more thought and time to think about it, about perhaps having a different recommendation for commercial, but we're interested in having more discussion. So I just kind of reading the chat and hearing what you just summarized, Gabby, that makes sense to me.
I think that sounds right, just to move to the next item, but I just want to elevate, I think some of the comment threads that folks are sharing here just around these ideas about native and drought-proof landscaping. So I don't know if that is another solution that can be entertained as a possibility.
It's certainly not something that is directly related to the emissions reductions that this was targeting. Obviously, it does hit at a variety of other environmental issues, and everything is so interconnected. It's hard to say that that can't be related to air quality. Obviously, it could have a downstream effect, but certainly the goal here was to target folks that are already using these pieces of equipment, the existing pieces in use. It would not be to purchase new equipment to get people to install lawns, but rather take used equipment off and provide it with electric. That said, I'm certainly taking down all of these notes, and I think all of this is great for maybe our second round of discussion at the next meeting, maybe centered more around commercial, spaces like schools. I don't think, I think we can all understand that primarily schools are going to have lawns, and maybe that's a place we target with commercial or a variety of other public spaces like parks. And so I think there's been a lot of really great discussion in here. Please add more of this comments in the chat because it helps us with our next recommendation. But I am hearing that this was a no, so I'm happy to move on to the next piece.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. This is so good so far. The second was something that we've talked about a couple of times in the past. And just to provide some brief context, our residential wood fireplace changeout program, right now, the maximum you could get is $3,000. We have heard from many folks, and we obviously have all the data on our end to support this, that primarily walking out the door for kind of a lower end to average unit with installing natural gas and getting rid of wood burning, it is costing about $3,500 to $4,000, meaning that folks who are already in the community and perhaps are low income are having to pay or asked to pay $500 out of pocket. And we're thinking actually across the valley, this might be the reason that some folks aren't able to take advantage of this program. Even that $500 is a lot, or even up to $1,000 for some. The idea here would be to add just $100,000 from that 2.6 million that would increase the incentive for every resident in the Stockton boundary from $3,000 per unit to $4,000 to help with that cost and hopefully make it zero cost for the residents. So the idea here is that you either vote yes or no to support that increase in incentive. And then we would go through and make sure that we are able to add that incentive and incentivize more folks to change over. So I do see Douglas and then Mary Elizabeth.
I think it's really good for because people who have houses who have a lot of spend can afford to change or renovate residential with firing. So I definitely think that is a good way to help them more to pay to install that than just add more. Like we'll give you half of it for $300 a year, where you have to pay an extra cost for something out of pocket, and which they cannot afford. So I definitely think that it really will help the less fortunate, the disadvantaged community to get the incentive to the full cost. You know, so I think that would be a worthwhile to invest in our community that are you know, causing the pollution and causing a lot of waste. So I definitely think that will be more helpful for that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Mary.
Thank you. Just real quick. So this is changing wood burning to natural gas burning, yes?
Correct. We already, as a part of the program.
And thank you. And I just want to point out that there's lots of folks in my neighborhood that are complaining a lot about the cost of gas. And so I just want to see, if we really want to support some heating, in homes, if there's not a better way. And I see lots of people here have already voted yes. So I just want to throw that out there because folks are really hurting from their PG&E bills, both gas and electric.
Yes, and that makes sense to me, Mary Elizabeth. One of the things I was about to say to your question is we do also provide incentives for electric heat pumps, which I do understand to your point. Obviously, also electric is very expensive, but for folks that want to go straight to electric, that is part of the incentive as well.
And this is Gabby. Jonathan, I see your hand raised as well. Wondering if you wanted to add a comment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Jonathan. I just wanted to make sure. So just to reiterate it, or just a clarification. So the electric replacement is also involved in this, correct?
The electric replacement was already, I believe, $4,000. This is increasing the natural gas one, which folks, and the electric does cost more than that, from my understanding. And maybe I can ask some folks, maybe we can make another decision later to make other changes there. But this is primarily the getting rid of wood and going to the natural gas, the main pathway. But yes, it already does include electric, I think is your question.
How much would upping it to where it's zero cost to the resident for electric be?
I don't know if I have the answer to that, to be fully honest with you. I don't have that data in front of me on how often or how much that has cost. It's pretty, not many folks I don't know have taken advantage of it. So I'm gonna have to check in with the team.
Debbie, I see your hand raised as well.
Thank you. I checked into this for my mother's old place. It was going to be for an electric insert. It was going to be approximately $3,500 to $4,000 with installation, which is included in the Serp.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have had to come up with another $1,000, even being low income. So I think this is a really well needed change in the Serp. And I shopped around and there's some that are even higher than that. So I do want to say that, you know, going electric is a little bit cheaper as far as the monthly estimate that they figure that it would be. But it does cost a little more on the end side. So the resident does have to come up with more money. So I wasn't able to do it because I couldn't afford that extra $1,000. So I would love to see others be able to do this and have it fully paid for if they, you know, qualify. And I think people would take advantage of it. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Gabby. I wonder if I can mute. I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. I see Douglas, your hand. I just want to just pause for a quick second before we take a second comment from you, Douglas. For a few things. So I'm going to mute you for a second, Doug, just to share something. Okay, so just doing a quick time check. Noticing we're at 6:40 and there's an additional part of this presentation, and I'm wondering just if you feel comfortable tabling that for next month, since it is related to more long-term next steps, so that we can move on with some of the standing updates. And then the other thing I just wanted to share and would love to get folks' input on the best way to proceed is that I did see a lot of yeses for this residential wood fireplace switch. And I did also noticing there are a few people who are saying no, but the majority of folks are saying yes in the chat. So I don't know if we want to move forward with approving based on a majority, or if we want some other format to get exact percentage, you know, of who's yes and who's no.
I have, maybe I'll offer, and I don't know if this helps a little bit. I technically, per our charter, I think consensus and majority, I think moving forward, but I will offer that I wonder if following up on some of the great questions about there's a couple of questions in here about subsidies and stipends. If that could be a separate discussion at a following meeting, while also making some decisions today, because we would have to go to our board and just for all of these, any decisions that we kind of tables the decision about going to our board, and might table any changes that are made ahead of the fireplace season. So because I do see that there were majority yeses, I'll just commit to making this initial change, but recognizing there are a couple of other recommendations that we could also make further changes to, like subsidies, or maybe taking a look at the electric option as well.
Thank you, Jess. And Doug, I want to give you the space to share your comment really briefly here.
Okay, I get the clarification, and some of the people have a very good point regarding the electrical as well as the gas, you know, and you know, everything is, to me, you know, I have nothing but electrical in my house. The only thing that have gas is the water, hot water that needs gas. That's it. But this month, the month that I had for the month of July is 900. So it's very high. So you know, whether it's not a matter of what I say. It's you know, it's between gas and electricity. They're both, you know, equally high. It will depend how you use them. You know, you need more gas, you need more things. You need more electricity, it's going to go up. You know, everything. We use air conditioning. We watch TV. We watch cable. You know, we watch music. You know, we have a swimming pool. You know, everything goes on is hot. You know, during the time of summer. So you know, if it's worth to have an electrical appliance, like to change wood exchange out, can we have an incentive because it costs more, or the wood may cost more or less than, or more equivalent to whatever the cost may be at the incentive? That's all. Thank you.
Thank this. I'm just kind of taking note, even folks that voted yes, I think are making other recommendations in the chat, Gabby. So I'm happy to table this. And I think what I'll do is we'll come back with a couple of more detailed and descriptions of the benefits of changing over out from wood. There's a lot of folks that maybe some folks don't even know how bad wood smoke is for them. And then also kind of the two options between electric and gas, some numbers based on Jonathan's question about how much it costs for the electric equipment. And then lots of discussion I'm hearing about the expense of electricity and gas and what we could do about that. So I hear that we're sort of at an impasse here, and I'm happy to table it for the next discussion, as well as our next question. Maybe I'll just tee it up, but we won't have a discussion right now since we're going to move on. We will table this discussion, as well as some discussion as to whether or not we want to add some funding to residential air filtration. It was just sort of going to be general feedback, not a specific recommendation about funding, because we would like to work with the subcommittee. But with that, I'll just kind of let folks think about that so we can tee it up for our next meeting. And I'm happy to stop sharing, Gabby, if there's anything we want to say to kind of wrap this up and move on.
Yeah, I just want to thank folks for being so flexible throughout this process here, and for to the Air District and to Jonathan, who helped to continue the conversation from last month. And I think we learned got a lot of really helpful feedback today that we can integrate into next month's meeting, and share some of those solutions based on some of that concrete feedback that folks provided in the chat. So thank you everyone for pivoting and for providing such detailed recommendations. What we'll do at this stage is move to doing some of the standing updates, and we only have time for time-sensitive updates at this stage. So I think Stephanie from the Air District is going to be reaching out to the rest of the subcommittees who don't have time-sensitive standing updates to share those via email. So please stay tuned for those. But at this time, I do want to see if folks from the Tree Subcommittee want to provide an update. I believe, Stephanie, it was the vegetative barriers update.
Yeah, and I'll actually go ahead and take this update for the Tree Subcommittee. This is Stephanie. And I just wanted to share, during our last Tree Subcommittee, the group, we actually reviewed the Vegetative Barriers Request for Proposal, or RFP as I'll call it. And essentially, again, this measure is planting vegetative barriers to block pollution from sources of concern, for example, like freeways or facilities. And we received some really great feedback from the group that we've incorporated into this request for proposal. And overall, so after that Tree Subcommittee, we did send a poll to the folks that do attend that to gauge how they're feeling about it and whether or not they're supportive of moving it to the full CSC. And overall, we've received unanimous support kind of from the Tree Subcommittee to move this vegetative barriers to the RFP. So at this time, we'd like to kind of bring this back to the full group and gauge whether or not there are any objections to releasing this vegetative barriers RFP that our Tree Subcommittee has recommended. And if what this means is essentially the goal is if this RFP is released, we kind of move to next steps of soliciting an entity to implement the program. So Gabby, if we don't mind just kind of gauging if there's any objections to this release, or if any folks from the Tree Subcommittee have anything to add, please feel free to contribute.
Yeah, Debbie, it looks like you have your hand raised.
I do. This is Debbie Provost. My only question is, there's locations already chosen for these RFPs. Is that correct?
So there are not. Oops, just getting a little bit of. Oh, awesome. So there are not locations selected at this time. The CSC, we definitely want to work to kind of recommend, certain priority areas, but part of the request for proposal will be for this entity to kind of bring also their recommendations. But at this time, there's no recommendation for any direct locations within Stockton.
Debbie, did that
I was just hoping that there would be a little more direction as to where, like we have some idea as to where those might be. And rather than holding it for the people that we are requesting a proposal from. I guess, you'd approve it, but.
Yeah, and a little
That's
bit.
just my.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm trying to.
This is Jessica. I was just going to share a little bit. I think there's a fair few number of folks that have, to your point, Debbie, we've already sort of outlined priorities for us. And I know that there's kind of priorities that I think are not only identified like in the RFP itself, but to Stephanie's point, we can work to direct based on who we select. And then also once we even select that person, they won't be going off kind of on their own. They'll be working directly with the subcommittee. So hopefully that helps, answer any concerns.
And thanks, Jess. I'll add to that. I'm going to drop into the chat a link to our RFP. And on page 8, there's a section just about some of the sources of concern that have been brought up. I think as many of you know, in the community, places like the Port of Stockton, Charter Way, Boggs Tract, so that there's, like Jess is saying, it's not just kind of blindly wherever they want. Like there's definitely direction that's being provided to the groups that would be applying.
Debbie, does that answer your comment? Okay, I'll work on lowering in a second. I was going to share, I see a few comments where a few folks are saying they agree to move the RFP forward. So maybe if there's no visible objections, then we can work on moving it forward. Okay. All right, Clifton, I saw you on mute for just a second. I didn't know if you had a comment or if that was an accident.
Yeah, I was just going to also respond to Debbie's question, but I think you guys pretty much answered it. But yeah, I was just going to say, as far as where the vegetative barriers go, the specific area we have it down to is just the AB617 boundary, because the air pollution that trees can suck up is pretty dispersed. So as long as, I guess, organizations are doing in that area, that's what we're looking for. But yeah, it's kind of depends who can find land that's available for urban greening and make those partnerships. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you. This is Gabby. That is really helpful. So I'm just going to reiterate that the Air District will be reaching out to the rest of the subcommittees and provide updates via email, and would just encourage any of the agencies joining here today, if you have something important that you'd like to share, please email the Air District with those updates so that we can distribute them to the rest of the CSC. I want to take a second just to kind of wrap us up and recap some of the next steps here. So I'm going to share my screen really briefly to walk you through some of the action items from today's meeting. If I can get some visible nods if you're seeing the action items. Okay. So the first action item here is that the Air District is going to work on correcting a few typos from the air monitoring presentation, as well as sending a quick summary of that presentation, including answers to any of the chat questions or links, data, live information, all of that. And then the Air District will continuously post reporting updates on their website related to this. Then there's going to be some follow-up on alternative recommendations for some of the things we discussed here today, including subsidies and stipends for electric and gas bills and some of the other incentives measures that were discussed. We're going to revisit the conversation around reallocation to the school air filtration funds and responding to all of the questions in the chat and taking into account the questions and recommendations from the CSC. And then the Air District will share updates from all the subcommittees via email. I'm just going to inform my team to amend that to also say that any agencies will reach out to the Air District with important updates so that those can be shared. Margot, I'm seeing your hand raised. Is there a question about these action items or anything we missed?
Well, I just wanted to suggest also, should the various subcommittees be thinking about if they have a need for extra money in their pot of gold. The money is there. This is the first we've heard about how we might be distributing it. And could the subcommittees change their Serp if that's possible, or is that just way too difficult?
This is Jess. I think that's a great question, Margot. And I think generally for all of these decisions, we are looking for committee recommendations. Definitely nothing happens in the vacuum of a subcommittee. So, but I think through discussions, if it's obvious that there's a need, and that was sort of one of our recommendations actually today, specifically with the indoor air filtration subcommittee, to work and see where we could find use for some of that funding. I will say that we'll have to kind of get together. There's definitely a sense here of wanting to reallocate the funds that we now know we're not going to use for a specific measure. I definitely don't want, it's not necessarily a, hey, we have all this funding, let's think about every single measure and reallocating it, but rather identifying based on known need, which is why we had originally proposed it with the few that we had, because those were what we had heard before. So I would just encourage in the subcommittees, think about the need rather than necessarily just saying, oh, there's a pot of funding out there. Maybe just using that as sort of the basis for, okay, we need emissions reductions. We know we need emissions reductions. Mary Elizabeth's comment actually here was one of our other suggestions we were thinking of. We need bicycle infrastructure, you know, some of the things we've already seen some shortfalls in. So I'll just kind of leave that little nugget for the subcommittees.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you, Margot, for the very thoughtful question. I think it sets us up perfectly for where we want to go with this conversation. And to that point, just sharing the next meetings that we have here as a collective. The first is next week on Thursday, August 11th at 3 p.m. we have our agenda setting meeting. Really encourage folks to show up. That's where we decide where the conversation is going to go for the CSC meeting. And it's extremely helpful to get your input at those if you are able to join. And then the next CSC meeting is happening Wednesday, September 7th at 5 p.m. So I also just want to provide a couple other reminders here. The first is for those who haven't submitted their W-9 forms to us, please make sure you're able to do that. It really helps us to keep a smooth incentive, not incentive. I am blanking on the word, stipend process going. So please, if you have questions about that, reach out to anyone at the Air District. They can connect you with us, or reach out to us directly if you do have we do have a Stockton facilitator email. I'm going to ask if someone from my team can drop that in there if folks have questions about their W-9s. And then just putting in the plug for a volunteer co-host for the next meeting. You can see there's a lot of energy about what we discussed here today. And if you're interested in being a part of leading any of those conversations, really encourage you to be the co-host. So with that, I want to just once again thank Jonathan for all of his hard work this past month in designing how this meeting was going to go and all of the contributions that he made. So I'm going to pass it off to him for some closing remarks as well as a quick update / announcement.
Thank you, Gabby. This is Jonathan Pruitt. Yeah, that was, you know, this is how it is with Zoom. We have to adapt, but I want to applaud the facilitation team. You guys came with alternatives, and then I'm glad the committee was able to come through with another alternative to the alternative, and you guys were very adaptable to it. The thing I wanted to provide is in a resource fair that's happening tomorrow. That is part of really hosted by the TCC work, but it does pretty much involve all of Stockton. A lot of this stuff is free resources, so I'll put into the chat. It is happening at Van Buskirk. I actually wanted to sort of share my screen if I could quickly, and this is what this event entails. Van Buskirk tomorrow, 6 p.m. We're going to have Grid Alternatives, Little Manila, getting people signed up for free trees. Grid Alternatives, no cost solar. It's legit, no cost solar. Edible Schoolyard Project, learn about the Box Track Farm, and Rising Sun Center for Opportunity, providing resources for really fixing or really decreasing your electric and water bills. And there's going to be food and raffles. Bring everyone together. It's going to be great. And if you can attend, I did provide a link to the live stream, which I will also be overseeing as well. So hope to see you all there if you can.
Thank you, Jonathan. At this time, we have just a little bit of time for any public comments. I'm going to open it up for any of that. And then, yeah, just reminding folks our contact information if you have questions about facilitation, as well as just letting some folks know, I think we reached out during this meeting regarding any outstanding stipends. So please keep a lookout for some of the resolving of that, and let us know if you have questions. Are we seeing any public comments in the YouTube live? Okay, no. Any public comments from this group?
Well, tomorrow, the Stockton Unified is also having their open house town hall meeting regarding their second grand jury report.
Thank you for sharing, Mary Elizabeth.
This is Margot. Can I ask Mary if that's at the school board meeting? When is that?
Yes, I believe so.
Any other public comments or announcements from the group? All right, I'm not seeing any. So just thank you all so much for joining today's conversation. Stay tuned for some of the action items and the follow-up that's coming in this next week or so. And we'll see you at the agenda setting meeting if you're able to join. And we hope you have